September 13th, 1848. A 25-year-old railroad foreman is about to have the worst day of his life. An explosion sends a 13-pound iron rod rocketing through his skull at high speed. It enters below his left cheek, obliterates a chunk of his frontal lobe, and exits out the top of his head. The rod lands 25 yards away, covered in blood and brain tissue. But here's the unbelievable part. Phineas Gage doesn't die. He doesn't even lose consciousness. Instead, he sits up, walks to a doctor, and says, "Doctor, here is business enough for you." This is the story of the man who lost part of his brain but kept his life and accidentally launched modern neuroscience. Before we dive into this wild medical mystery, if you're new here, welcome to The Sleeping Psychologist, where I dig up the most shocking psychology experiments and medical cases you definitely slept through in science class. Phineas Gage's story is literally brain-blowing, and it changed everything we know about how personality works. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Man Before the Iron. Vermont, 1848. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing, and America's railroad boom is connecting the nation. Phineas P. Gage is living the American dream. He's 25 years old, described by his employer as the most efficient and capable foreman in their employ. He's responsible, reliable, and respected. His job? Supervising crews who are blasting rock to clear the way for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad through Cavendish, Vermont. Here's how railroad construction worked back then. You drill a hole in solid rock. You pour gunpowder into the hole. You add a fuse. Then you pack sand on top of the powder using a tamping iron heavy metal rod designed to compress the sand without triggering the explosion. Finally, you light the fuse, run, and boom, the rock shatters. It's dangerous work, but Gage is good at it. Really good. By all accounts, Phineas is the kind of guy you'd want on your team. His coworkers describe him as balanced, smart, and energetic. He's got a sharp business mind. He makes plans and follows through. He's polite, respectful, and considerate of others. Dr. John Martin Harlow, the local physician who knew Gage personally, would later write that he was a perfectly healthy, strong, and active young man with excellent character. But September 13th, 1848 starts like any other workday. Gage and his crew are preparing to blast through rock along the railroad bed. The routine is second nature to him by now. Drill the hole, add powder, add sand, tamp it down with the iron rod. He's done this hundreds of times. The tamping iron itself is a beast of a tool. It's 3 feet 7 inches long, weighs 13 pounds, and tapers to a point at one end. Think of it like a javelin made of solid iron. It's essential for the job, but in the wrong circumstances, it's also a deadly projectile. Gage has no idea that in just a few minutes, this tool will become one of the most famous objects in medical history, or that he's about to become the most important brain injury patient neuroscience has ever seen. Because what's about to happen will be so catastrophic, so medically impossible, that doctors will be arguing about it for the next 175 years. Chapter 2. The Fatal Mistake. It's around 4:30 p.m. Gage is preparing another blast charge. He pours gunpowder into a newly drilled hole in the rock. But here's where something goes terribly, catastrophically wrong. According to the most detailed accounts, Gage gets distracted. Maybe he's supervising workers. Maybe he's looking over his shoulder. We'll never know for sure. But in that moment of distraction, he makes a mistake that will change his life forever. He forgets the sand. Without thinking, Gage lowers the tamping iron directly into the hole full of gunpowder. No protective layer of sand between the metal and the explosive. Just iron meeting powder. He starts to tamp it down. The iron strikes the rock. A spark ignites, and the gunpowder detonates. The explosion is instant and massive. The tamping iron becomes a missile. It shoots upward with the force of a cannonball, traveling at an estimated 100+ miles per hour. The pointed end strikes Gage just below his left cheekbone. It doesn't glance off. It doesn't slow down. It punches straight through his skull like a bullet through paper. The iron rod enters his left cheek, travels upward through his brain, destroying his left frontal lobe as it goes, then exits through the top of his skull just behind his hairline. The force is so powerful that the rod launches another 25 to 30 yards behind him before hitting the ground. When workers rush over, they find it lying there, slick with blood, brain tissue, and fragments of bone. Gage is thrown onto his back by the blast. Everyone expects to find a dead man. This is 1848. Antibiotics don't exist yet. Brain surgery is a death sentence. Even minor head wounds often prove fatal from infection. A 3-foot iron rod through the brain? That should be instantly, obviously, 100% fatal. But then Phineas Gage does something impossible. He speaks, he moves. Within minutes, he's sitting up. His crew is in shock. They're staring at a man who should absolutely be dead, but he's conscious and talking. He has a gaping hole in his head. You can literally see through it, but he's asking what happened. His men help him into an ox cart and transport him 3/4 of a mile to his boarding house. During the entire bumpy ride, Gage remains conscious. When the cart arrives, he doesn't wait for help. He climbs down from the cart himself, walks up the steps, and sits down in a chair on the porch. Dr. John Harlow arrives within 30 minutes. And that's when Gage delivers one of the most famous lines in medical history. "Doctor, here is business enough for you." The man has an iron rod-sized tunnel through his brain, and he's cracking jokes. Chapter 3. The Impossible Survival. Dr. Harlow can't believe what he's seeing. He examines the wound and realizes the full horror of the situation. The entry wound below Gage's left cheek is about the diameter of a quarter. The exit wound at the top of his skull is even larger, about 2 inches across. When Harlow leans close, he can see brain tissue pulsing with Gage's heartbeat. Part of Gage's frontal lobe has been completely destroyed. Fragments of skull bone are embedded in the wound. By all medical knowledge of 1848, Phineas Gage should die within hours. But he doesn't. For the first few days, things actually look hopeful. Gage is weak and in pain, but he's lucid. He recognizes people. He answers questions. Harlow cleans the wound as best he can with the primitive tools available, basically soap, water, and hope. Remember, this is before anyone understood germ theory. Doctors don't even wash their hands between patients yet. Then 2 weeks after the accident, infection sets in. Gage develops what's called fungus cerebri, literally brain fungus. It's a massive infection. Pus drains from both the entry and exit wounds. Gage develops a high fever. He slips into a semi-comatose state and becomes delirious. His family prepares for his death. A coffin is built and waiting. But Dr. Harlow doesn't give up. He drains the infection. He keeps the wounds clean. And somehow, impossibly, Gage starts to improve. By early October, just 3 weeks after having an iron rod shot through his brain, Gage is walking around. By November, he's strong enough to return home to Lebanon, New Hampshire. 10 weeks after the accident, Dr. Harlow declares Gage physically recovered. His wounds have healed. He has full use of his arms and legs. His speech is normal. His memory is intact. He has lost vision in his left eye, the one on the side where the rod entered, but other than that, he seems fine. It's a medical miracle. Doctors in Boston and beyond hear about the case and are stunned. This shouldn't be possible. Harlow writes up the case and publishes it in medical journals. The story spreads. Phineas Gage becomes famous as the man who survived the impossible. But here's what nobody realizes yet. While Gage's body has recovered, something far more profound has changed. His friends and coworkers start noticing something's wrong. The Phineas Gage who returned from his injuries isn't the same man who left that morning in September. Physically, he looks almost normal, just a prominent scar on his forehead where the rod exited. But mentally, emotionally, socially, he's different. Really different. The polite, responsible, considerate foreman is gone. In his place is someone his friends barely recognize. Dr. Harlow will later describe it this way. Gage was no longer Gage. That simple sentence captures the terrifying truth. The man survived, but the person? That person died when the iron rod destroyed his frontal lobe. What Gage doesn't know yet is that his personality change is about to become more famous than his survival. He's about to prove something revolutionary. Your brain doesn't just control your body, it controls who you are. Chapter 4. The Man Who Wasn't There Anymore. Before the accident, Phineas Gage was known for his steady temperament and good judgment. After, he's impulsive, unpredictable, and volatile. The changes are dramatic and disturbing. Dr. Harlow documents the transformation in detail. Pre-accident Gage was a man of temperate habits and considerable energy of character. Post-accident Gage is fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profanity which was not previously his custom. Translation: Gage now curses constantly, something the old Gage never did. He becomes impatient and stubborn. He loses the ability to stick to plans. Before, if Gage committed to something, he followed through. Now, he makes plans and abandons them immediately. He'll say he's going to do one thing, then completely change his mind moments later with no explanation. He can't hold a thought long enough to execute it. Worse, he's lost all social filter. He says rude, inappropriate things. He shows no respect for authority. He's inconsiderate of other people's feelings. His friends describe him as capricious. He acts on every random impulse that crosses his mind. One moment he wants one thing, the next moment he wants the opposite. There's no consistency, no stability. His employer, the same railroad company that called him their best foreman, refuses to give him his job back. They can't trust him to make safe decisions anymore, and they're right to be concerned. The qualities that made Gage excellent at his dangerous job, careful planning, attention to detail, impulse control, are gone. But here's the really disturbing part. Gage doesn't think anything is wrong. From his perspective, he's fine. He doesn't understand why people are treating him differently. He can't see that his personality has fundamentally changed. His memory works. His intelligence is intact. He can walk, talk, and reason. So what's the problem? This is the horror of frontal lobe damage. It doesn't take away your ability to think or remember. It takes away something more subtle and more important: your ability to be yourself. Your personality, your judgment, your impulse control, your ability to plan for the future and follow through, all of that lies in your frontal cortex. And Gage's left frontal lobe is destroyed. His friends say it perfectly. Gage is no longer Gage. Physically, he's the same person. Same face, same body, same memories. But the essence of who Phineas Gage was, his character, his temperament, his soul, for lack of a better word, is gone. Erased by 3 feet of iron traveling through the wrong part of his brain at 100 miles per hour. And nobody in 1848 understands why. They don't know about the frontal lobe. They don't understand brain localization. They just know that the man they knew is gone, replaced by someone wearing his face. Chapter 5. The Lost Years. So what happens to a man who survives the impossible, but loses himself in the process? For a while, Gage tries to make his way in the world. By mid-1849, he feels strong enough to return to work, but the railroad won't rehire him. Word has spread about his personality changes. Nobody wants to employ a foreman who can't stick to a plan or control his impulses. Not when one mistake could kill his entire crew. Gage ends up on display, literally. He travels to New England, exhibiting himself in town halls and museums. He carries the tamping iron with him everywhere and tells the story of his accident over and over. Think about how bleak that is. He's reduced to being a carnival curiosity, the man who survived the iron rod. This is what happens to medical miracles in the 19th century when they can't work anymore. But then something interesting happens. In 1852, Gage goes to Chile. He gets a job as a long-distance stagecoach driver, managing a 6-horse coach along difficult mountain routes. And here's the fascinating part. This job requires skill, responsibility, and consistency, the kind of qualities everyone said Gage no longer possessed. He works this demanding job for nearly 7 years. This suggests that maybe Gage experienced some level of recovery. The structured, repetitive nature of the work might have helped his brain adapt. Or maybe the personality changes weren't as severe or permanent as early reports suggested. We'll never know for certain. What we do know is that for 7 years, Gage held down a difficult job that required judgment and responsibility. In 1859, Gage's health starts declining. He leaves Chile and returns to San Francisco to be with his mother and sister. But the damage from his injury is catching up with him. He begins experiencing seizures, epileptic fits, likely caused by the scar tissue in his brain. The seizures get worse, more frequent, more severe. On May 21, 1860, almost 12 years after the accident, Phineas Gage dies during a series of convulsions. He's only 36 years old. The official cause of death is status epilepticus, basically, his brain seizing itself to death. He dies almost completely broke. No fame, no fortune, no recognition for being one of the most important medical cases in history. Just a former railroad worker with a horrific scar and a tamping iron that followed him everywhere. But his story? That's just beginning. Chapter 6. The Birth of Modern Neuroscience. In 1867, 7 years after Gage's death, Dr. Harlow does something extraordinary. He contacts Gage's family and requests permission to exhume the body. Specifically, he wants the skull. The family agrees. Harlow digs up Gage's grave, retrieves his skull, and adds it to his medical collection, along with the actual tamping iron that caused the injury. Today, both the skull and the rod are on permanent display at the Warren Anatomical Museum at Harvard Medical School. You can go see them right now. They're exactly as they were in 1848 skull, with 2 massive holes, iron rod with dried blood, and tissue still embedded in it. But the real preservation happens in neuroscience. Gage becomes the most famous patient in brain science history. Why? Because his case proves something revolutionary. Different parts of your brain control different functions. And your frontal lobe controls who you are as a person. Before Gage, most scientists believed the brain worked as one unified organ. The idea that specific brain regions controlled specific functions, called localization, was controversial. Gage's case provided dramatic, undeniable proof. Destroy the frontal lobe, lose impulse control and personality. The rest of the brain still works fine. Memory intact, intelligence intact, speech intact. But the person is fundamentally changed. This insight launched modern neuroscience. It led directly to our understanding that the frontal cortex controls executive functions, planning, decision-making, impulse control, social behavior. All the things that make you you. All the things Gage lost. And the story keeps evolving. In 2012, researchers at UCLA used modern imaging technology to analyze Gage's skull and create a detailed map of the exact damage. They found that the rod didn't just destroy localized tissue. It severed connections between the frontal lobe and the rest of the brain. About 11% of Gage's white matter was damaged. These white matter connections are like the brain's wiring. Cut the wires, and even the undamaged regions can't communicate properly. This explains why Gage's changes were so severe. It wasn't just the missing chunk of frontal lobe, it was the disconnection of his entire left frontal network from the rest of his brain. His frontal lobe couldn't talk to his emotional centers, his decision-making regions, his impulse control systems. The structures were still there, but they couldn't coordinate. So here's what haunts me about Phineas Gage. He survived the impossible. A 13-pound iron rod through the brain, and he walked away, talked, lived for 12 more years. That's a miracle, but in another way, he didn't survive at all. The Phineas Gage who walked into work that morning in 1848 responsible, considerate, respected died the moment that rod went through his frontal lobe. The man who climbed out of the ox cart was someone else wearing Gage's body. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What makes you you? Your memories? Gage kept those. Your intelligence? Gage kept that too. Your body? Gage looked the same. But his friends said he was no longer Gage. Gage's skull sits in Harvard today, a reminder that consciousness is fragile, that personality isn't permanent, that we are, for better or worse, meat computers made of electricity and chemistry. Damage the hardware, and the software changes. If you want more stories about experiments that changed psychology forever, check out the Little Albert experiment, Next Another Case Where Science Went Too Far. Subscribe to The Sleeping Psychologist so you never sleep through the stories that changed how we understand the human mind. I'll see you in the next one.